On this. Voila, it is hot. Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to my favorite Rotary Club in the world, the Rotary Club of York. I am your president, Aaron Jacobs, and it's such a great day to be a Rotarian. And the reason why it's such a great day to be a Rotarian is because we gather together in friendship, and for at least 1 hour, you get to leave your troubles at work and the world behind you and be among some of the greatest community leaders in all of your county. And we realize there's something bigger than all of us, and that is service to our fellow men and women of the community, or as we like to say, service above self. And we also have a four-way test to keep us tethered to honor and duty, and it goes like this. I got the clicker this time. I beat you, Mike. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? As you can see, good things come in the fours, like our four-way test, but sometimes good things come in threes, like these three outstanding. Wait, I'm missing somebody. There's number three. It almost came in twos. These outstanding true Rotarians who helped get the program started will have Brittany Reese do our opening song, The Star Spangled Banner and the Pledge, followed by the invocation by past President Glenn Miller and visitor introductions from John Eister. Brittany.
If you'll join me. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and it's the clouds bursting gayly through the night, that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner o'er the land of the free and the home of pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. Hear the words of the prophet Amos. Who builds his upper chambers in the heavens and founds his vaults in the earth? Who calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out upon the surface of the earth? The Lord is his name. Please prepare yourselves for prayer in the manner to which you are accustomed. God, the master designer and engineer, God who brought forth the vaults of heaven and the earth below, we give you thanks this day for all of your gifts, but most especially for those whose work as engineers brings dreams to life, and in doing so brings a better life to the world. We thank you for the work of our speaker and ask that you bless his time with us today. As we celebrate those places where things are built up around us, be with those who are suffering in the places being torn down and apart by violence and warfare. Bring your healing to the sick, your strength to the weak, your joy to the sorrowful. Bless our time together as friends and Rotarians and the food that we have received. To you, the one God of many names, we pray. Amen.
Wow, what a day. Brittany can really sing and Glenn can really pray. I hope I do as well. So I'm pleased to have the honor today to introduce our guest at the meeting. When I call your name, please stand and remain standing until President Aaron has welcomed you. The first four folks are guests of our speaker, Mark Wheeler, Brian Eck, Bill Tollinger, and Jim Flinchbaugh. Next guest of myself is Tammy Snyder. Guest of Austin Hunt, Jim Walters. Guest of Ben Shipley, Laura Greenholt and Seth Nensteel. Guest of Tony Calderon, Sophia Calderon. Guest of Chris Toff, Sue Dumars. And guest of Andy Rawitz, Cora Taylor. President Aaron.
Yeah, thanks, John. Mark Wheeler's back. Is this a rejoin opportunity? Hey, Sue, raise your hand for a moment. Sue, if you haven't been on Facebook, have you seen our ad on Facebook lately about our club? That's how Sue found us. Thank you, Chris Topp, for pulling that all together. And for those of you by now, if you couldn't tell, visitor introductions really are one of my favorite parts of our weekly program because it gives me the opportunity to scan the room for potential new members or rejoins. And right now I see a whole bunch of guests, but I assure you today you will enjoy one of the finest lunches in your county. Wasn't that shrimp scampi something today? That was good stuff. Sure, you can applaud for food. They won't applaud for me, but for shrimp, yeah, they'll do it. We have the finest community leaders and a fantastic program, so really, what's not to like? Please visit us again, and Rotarians, help us welcome our guests today. We got announcements. Well, we're on the wrong slide there. There we go. Look at this. See, I can battle Mike on the slides. This is awesome. The RCY board will meet tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. via Zoom. The IDEA committee will meet on March 18th, 8 o'clock via Zoom. And also, you are invited to attend the annual District 7390 conference. So Friday on April 19th, they'll feature a kickoff event at the U.S. Army Heritage and Education Center in Carlisle. And the evening will be fun and fellowship, but the highlight will be the finals for the District 4-Way Speech Contest. Then on Saturday, April 20th, a district-wide service project will be held in the morning. And then at 2 p.m., all Rotarians will gather at Heritage Hills Resorts here in York for some informational sessions until 4:30, followed by a celebration of the 23-24 Rotary year and a cocktail hour, and then the governor's banquet. If you're interested in attending either of these days or both, please reach out to Lynn or myself for further details. And now I'd like to invite Joe Stein, committee chair for Preserve Planet Earth, to help me with an announcement of a project we have coming up. Joe, you can applaud him. He's like shrimp. My clicker's not working. Keep going. I broke the internet. You said fresh batteries. There we go. Let me try this. There we go. All right. So in case you haven't driven downtown lately or been keeping up on the local Facebook posts, our Continental Square right now looks a lot different than it did when we first had our Love for Community event last year. At the beginning of my year, I was excited to share my president's project and vision of re-landscaping Continental Square in New York City. And I'm proud to share that today, everything with the project is running smoothly and is now ready for Rotarians. For those of you who may have missed it or not paying attention, I will refresh you to this. Continental Square is the center city square of York City, and our goal is to take pride by making Rotary, a club of York, known to all of the members and guests and residents of York City. So, history, for those of you who don't know, this is what we have coined and deemed the first capital of the United States. Not just York County, not just York City, but York Continental Square was where it all first happened with the Articles of Confederation. So think for a moment, if you come out and help, you may be planting a shrub right where John Adams once stood. How cool is that? The reason why we're doing this is we want to keep our presence downtown, even though we don't meet at the Yorktown Hotel anymore. And as always, with Preserve Planet Earth, we're trying to focus on the environmental needs of the city. And we want to align our club with the legacy and history of our city and remain visible. And frankly, we need to keep our commitment to York firm and committed. So what is the project? There are 5 planters that if you've been downtown, the trees are gone, the shrubs are gone, and even the soil is gone in there. They aren't much to look at right now. So we're inviting Rotarians, and Joe will tell you more about this, to come out on April 4th to help plant all the shrubs and the perennials in this. And when it's all said and done and the mulch, we're also going to light this up at night, and we're going to have some pretty cool signs for it as well. So Joe, you want to take over?
You can keep the clicker since you're the clicking pro.
Oh.
So yes, we are inviting everyone to come and join us. We need 20 volunteers. We're about halfway there to come out April 4th. It is a Thursday. Rain date would be April 5th. That's a Friday. And that's so that we can coordinate with Trump Landscaping and city crews as necessary. So we understand if you can't make it, but we really hope that you can. If you have no experience in planning, no problem. Here's what you need. Shovel, this size, smaller, whatever, gloves, sunscreen, water bottle, whatever makes you comfortable to get out and get dirty. We'll have the contractors there to help us. If you're able to plant, great. Bring the shovel, bring your gear, bring a broom to help clean up at the end. Next slide. If you can't plant, or if you just want to stop in, stop by, take photos. It is a momentous occasion. We are in historic Continental Square. We're revitalizing it. It's probably been 50 years since the last upgrade. Hopefully this lasts for 50 years and beyond. If you have one of these fantastic t-shirts, you may wear it. If not, just like I said, something else that you can get dirty, or see Al. I think Al said he might have some additional t-shirts that day when we're out there. Bring your shovel and a smile. Come say hello and show your support. Yep. Sounds good.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure JT Hand hears this. It's all fresh topsoil. You can handle this, JT. We need you there, okay? All right, very good. And now I'd like to invite Steve Feldman to the podium for the President's Challenge. Steve.
I'm here to talk to you for a few minutes about the Legacy Committee of our club. And I think we should rename the Legacy Committee the Matchmaking Committee, because it exists for one purpose and one purpose alone: to match your passions with the York Rotary Foundation. As we all know, from the many requests for donations that we get every day to help people locally, nationally, internationally, philanthropy is getting more and more expensive. Our Rotary Club plays an important role in people's lives, both locally, nationally, and internationally. And it's also something that is important in our individual lives, because if it wasn't, we wouldn't have to be here today. So just think about the commitment that you've already made to Rotary, and then think about the things that brought you here. All of this is happening in times that are a-changing. Costs of philanthropic activities have been growing faster than the inflation rate for decades, not just with the recent inflation. This club, with great foresight, opened the Charitable Endowment Fund a long time ago to help us grow our capacity to do good. Our job in the Legacy Committee is to constantly remind you that you can help us grow that capacity to do good. Our challenge to you is to grow planned gifts to the foundation and expand the kinds of things that we fund. We would really like to see somebody step up and dedicate a gift to our foundation that funds some of our community activities as well as our wonderful scholarship program. Do you care about York City Little League? Do you care about Preserve Planet Earth? Maybe you would like to fund a fund that would provide matching gifts to the club to encourage gifts to the Rotary Foundation. What's your passion? step up with your ideas, and we will talk about it and see if we can figure out a way to make it happen. The Legacy Committee's members are Mac Brillhart, Bob Davis, Glenn Miller, Lynn Morrison, ex officio, Al Sykes, and Brian Tate. Any one of us will be happy to hear what you are really passionate about, and then we will help you find a way to make a gift that will perpetuate that passion. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. We have a couple extra minutes here, so I want to embellish a little bit of what Steve brought up to this podium. When we use the word legacy, this club, how old is this club? Does anybody know? 100, and then they start to mumble. 108 years old. So this club in and of itself is a legacy to the club. It's a legacy to the community, and it's a legacy to us, the members, of whatever people did 108 years ago so we could enjoy this club today. I have participated personally in the Legacies Committee because I believe in the club and the work that it does. And frankly, when this club turns 208 years old, I want to know that my legacy lives on with this club's legacy. So I would encourage you to support Steve and his committee and the good work we do, because that's what makes Rotary go. Thank you again, Steve. And now I'd like to invite past President Dave Meckley to the podium to introduce our program. Dave.
Good afternoon. I've been honored to be a part of Flinchbaugh Engineering's history and legacy for over 40 years. The story of FEI, Flinchbaugh Engineering, is perhaps similar to many entrepreneurial startups in New York, but it also has its own unique aspects. And when I think of what distinguishes FEI, I would say three things: innovation, employee engagement, and integrity. It's a pleasure for me to recognize today Jim Flinchbaugh, Bill Tollinger, and Steve Shank. As a founder, Jim Flinchbaugh and the other founders set a very high bar. As an individual who worked in various capacities at FEI, Bill Tollinger set a standard for quality and reliability with both customers and associates that established FEI's reputation. Steve Shank has taken that proud tradition and charted a bright future. As noted in the announcer, Steve has a BS degree from the University of Delaware. In the early 2000s, I reached out and met with fellow Rotarian Rich Randall. I think Rich is here today. Where's Rich? Rich is back there. Rich was working for ITT Engineered Valves, and I arranged a lunch with him to discuss the possibility of FEI doing work for ITT. Rich brought along one of his associates, a young man by the name of Steve Shank. ITT and FEI never did any business together, but during that meeting, Steve made quite an impression. A few years later, when FEI was looking for a vice president of operations, Steve came on board and has helped transition the company to a 100% employee-owned ESOP in 2012. And in 2017, he became the third president in the company's history. It's my pleasure to introduce a good friend and colleague, Steve Shank.
Maybe I should make my wife listen to that introduction. So it's an honor to be here today, speaking on behalf of Flinchbaugh Engineering and talking about the history. I know many of you woke up this morning super excited and just couldn't wait to get here to learn the answer to the question, why is a manufacturing company called Flinchbaugh Engineering? And if that was what woke you up this morning, hold on, you're going to find out. I'm going to talk about a history that really started in 1978 and carries through to today. Along the way, I'm going to hopefully you'll refer to some themes that echo Dave's comments. The company was actually incorporated in 1974, and I just learned this morning that it was for Don Flinchbaugh, one of the original founder. It was incorporated to service his consulting business as an engineer, and that was the way the name came to fruition. But I'm going to spend the time talking about 1978 to 2024. I have 44 slides to cover 46 years, and hopefully you'll hear some of the themes that Dave expressed. First and foremost, I want to express a debt of gratitude for the legacy left by the founders, which included Jim's father, Don, his brother, John, who couldn't be here today, as well as Dave's father, Dan Meckley. Owners along the way, which include Dave and Bill, and also the past leaders, which would also include Mike Lehman, who was my predecessor. Where in the world is Flinchbaugh Engineering located? Well, we're at the epicenter of York in the Bridges to Nowhere. The Bridges to Nowhere, of course, going to Lancaster. We're sandwiched between 462 and Route 30, and that's where we take our first journey, our first step on the journey today. This was an aerial photograph from 1937. To your far right, you'll see the Tourist Inn, or the TI, which still stands there today. 462, of course, was in use, and you can see the old quarry, which, well, was an old quarry and is now a reservoir. The orchard, about where the arrow points, is where our very first building was eventually built in 1978. And special thanks to Brian Eck for providing some of those documents. In 1957, there was actually an active airfield called Crumling Airfield in what would soon become the industrial complex where Flinchbaugh Engineering has its location. There are two buildings that were constructed for the airfield that are still in existence today. So if you would take a turn onto Commerce Way to get up to what is now Runway, you'll see the airplane hangar as it originally existed back in 1957. In 1971, you get to see Route 30 appears to be under construction. The airfield was no longer in use, and you can see the early formation of a commercial development along 462. I take a step back just to kind of link two histories together. Caterpillar, which became Flinchbaugh Engineering's first customer, started their journey in 1904 with the first track-type tractor that was used for farming. That grew and quickly spread until Caterpillar was a global bellwether that it still is today. Along that journey in 1977, they built their first D10 model tractor, which is the elevated sprocket design. And the elevated sprocket design, I'm going to enhance the photo. It's essentially when you're driving around and you see a bulldozer, if it has an elevated sprocket design, it's going to be a Caterpillar tractor because they're the only manufacturer that has that design, that unique design. And that unique design required a pivot shaft. That pivot shaft serves as essentially a way of mechanically joining the treads on both sides to the chassis. And that first design, this was the prototype that was built in 1977. That challenge, how to make the pivot shaft, eventually became the origin of Flinchbaugh Engineering. Here's a better view. This is a smaller tractor, a D7, but that pivot shaft, that where the green arrow resides, is ultimately what Flinchbaugh Engineering was formed to produce. Caterpillar was faced with this unique challenge. How do you make this thing 8 foot to 12 foot long, 8 to 10 inches in diameter, in a way that was cost effective and ability to meet the strong technical requirements of the component? Well, Don and Jim had already made a smaller part that was similar. And in fact, they had patented a design for the equipment to produce that smaller component. And when Don was approached by Caterpillar, he quickly was able to design the future process without even looking at a print. And that was a reflection of his experience, his ability as an engineer, and his can-do attitude. So in 1977, you had this unique need of a customer, Caterpillar, to make this pivot shaft. You had two local families because then Dan Meckley got involved. So you had the Flinchbaugh and Meckley families. And you had this newly formed industrial complex that was taking shape between 462 and Route 30. In 1978, an agreement was reached to design and build not only the equipment to produce the parts, the pivot shafts, but a 10-year commitment to produce the actual parts. And that is when Don asked John Flinchbaugh, John, would you please go incorporate under the name Toolcraft? And John said, sure, Dad, I'll go do that. A couple of days later, he came back and said, geez, Dad, that name's already taken. And what are we going to do now? And fortunately, Flinchbaugh Engineering had already been incorporated. And Don said, begrudgingly, I guess we'll use that name. And that's how the Flinchbaugh Engineering name came linked to a manufacturing company. So it was backed by the commitments of the Flinchbaugh and Meckley families. $3.2 million was spent, which is roughly $15 million in today's money. Construction was completed to build a dedicated building on runway, which was basically the end of the old crumbling airfield. And the first pivot shaft was shipped in 1978, and the production line was in place in 1979. This is an aerial view from 1978 that shows Building 1 now in position and shows the beginnings of what's now new standard as you would turn onto Commerce Way and drive up the hill to Runway, which the road was named after the airfield. So Building 1 still exists today. This picture was taken this week, and the equipment that was produced, that was created, is still being run today. In fact, we're running the heat treat process as I speak. Here are some early photos. This line was, again, specifically designed to make pivot shafts. And it's been making pivot shafts since 1979 after the production equipment was in place, and it still runs today. A testament to not only the engineers, but the maintenance people that work on it and keep it running. This is the team that made it happen. I apologize, it's a little grainy, but on the right side, the photo, Bill Tollinger is the second person from the right, and I think Jim Flinchbaugh is standing right beside him. So again, that team, which included the early employees of Flinchbaugh Engineering, as well as folks from Caterpillar, really made it happen. In 1984 and 85, the partnership grew, the relationship with Caterpillar grew to include transmission components. And that small step into making transmission components eventually resulted in Flinchbaugh Engineering being the largest supplier of transmission components to Caterpillar. We were initially awarded a first order, and we invested in the equipment and expanded into building number 2. So now in 1984 and 85, we have 2 buildings. In 1988, we launched our the first participants in the Machinist Apprenticeship Program, and that tradition has continued to this day with over 50 graduates from our employee base. You can see Dave Meckley in the middle, looking just a bit younger than he does now. To Dave Meckley's credit, in 1988, Flinchbaugh launched an empowerment program, and we still use some elements of that training that took place back in 1988 today. Dave also mentioned to me that he presented at Rotary at that time and presented on the topic, as well as including a tour of FEI, and some of you may have participated in that back in 1988. As I was kind of preparing for this presentation, I read some of the old corporate minutes, which are fascinating, especially if you can't sleep. But in May 15th, 1989, the group at the time, Dave Meckley, Dan Meckley, Jim Flinchbaugh, I'm sure John was there as well, noted some 5 things that they felt that Flinchbaugh Engineering should focus on. One was adding additional customers. So that seems like a no-brainer. They were one customer, right? Let's add some customers. 2, they want to be a production shop, not a job shop. That's important because that directs our focus and has directed our focus ever since. Parts should be difficult to manufacture. That's certainly true. And we should look for customers who want to partner and have a long-term view. And I think you'll hear those themes echoed throughout my presentation because we're still doing those things today. In 1993-94, we had the opportunity to partner with a local customer, SKF in Hanover, on a technically challenging long-term project, and that was the production of all SKF split bearing housings. This was a huge investment at the time, $4 million of additional capital poured into the business for customer number 2, and we also completed the expansion of our building number 2. So in 16 years, from 1978 to 1994, we now have 2 customers, but they both are very similar. They're global customers. They have challenging, difficult to produce parts. They both take long-term views and are interested in partnership. In 2000, just a view of where we were, we had grown from $0 in 1977 to a $20 million business with 2 buildings, 60,000 square feet of production space, 2 global customers, 3 product families, with a real strong technical and operational mindset. There really wasn't anything we didn't think we could do. We could figure it out. And a culture of engagement, which eventually became the platform for becoming an employee-owned business. In 2001, we became 60% employee-owned through an ESOP. Of course, we spent a lot of time, energy training our folks on what that means for them, which is essentially a retirement fund for their benefit. And we also, at the time, really started to energize and focus on growth and diversification. About that time, we developed what we referred to or coined a strategic cell migration. This is an innovative growth strategy coming from a company that had already spent over $25 million in today's money, looking for a way to grow without spending a lot of capital. This idea really reflected in the way we went to market. So we led with this program. We would meet with customers. This is what we would normally first talk about. Hey, can we move some of your equipment that's not part of your core competency, that's maybe taking up some underutilized floor space, move it to our shop floor, preserve the manufacturing knowledge, and reduce the risk of failure, increase the speed of execution. And that worked very, very well. In fact, we've done 23 strategic cell migrations over the years. In fact, we consider ourselves the originator of the concept, and we've wrote the book. So in 2008, employee ownership was working well. We were growing our business. We were basically had grown 250% in 4 years. So we were at a $50 million annual sales volume, and which was really creating some nice account value for our early ESOP participants. However, 2009 came along and punched us right in the stomach. The Great Recession hit. Our sales dropped in half. It really gave us an opportunity to demonstrate that we were all in this together. And so from the top down, we all took time off without pay, furloughs, and we survived. Along the way, we were pressure tested. So we managed to make a small profit in spite of having a 50% drop in top line sales. And we met all our bank covenants, which made Fulton Bank very happy. Where's Tammy? There she is. In 2010, I want to share a story that kind of reflects the can-do attitude and spirit of employee ownership. We had a small tornado or a microburst come down runway one afternoon on a hot summer day, and it essentially lifted the roof off of our building 1. So a 20,000 square foot building. It snapped, it sheared the bolts, lifted the roof off, and set it down about a foot from where it was. We came in the next morning and initially called Kinsley. Kinsley had done the construction of the original building. And so Kinsley came in, and our maintenance guys are always curious of how things were made and how things were fixed. And a couple of our maintenance guys went up on the lift with the Kinsley folks and went around to inspect it. And along the way, they were asking a lot of good questions. When we received the quote for Kinsley to fix the roof, it was $35,000, if I remember correctly. And our maintenance guys looked at it and thought, why in the world do we spend $35,000? We can do that. So we said, well, what do you mean? Well, we basically told us how they were going to fix it. So I said, well, okay, what do we need to do? So we rented a couple high lifts and fixed it for a couple $1,000s, and then invited Kinsley back in to inspect it, and they lost the sale. But that's just the mentality of our folks. They think they can fix everything. And they also know that a dollar spent on something else is a dollar that they don't have in terms of value for the ESOP. So it's a real powerful story that we use, but that happens over and over again and throughout our history. In 2011, we had bounced back. So we had come through the recession and come out the other side, and we were churning and burning. Caterpillar largely caused the overproduction because they kind of overreacted to the Great Recession in 2009. And along the way, we had to hire around 200 people to keep 100 people. So it was a very expensive journey for us and not really good for an employee-owned business. However, it did give us the opportunity in 2012 to move to 100% employee-owned business. So the 40% that was owned outside of the ESOP was now sold to the ESOP, and we became 100% employee-owned. And so the only way to really participate in ownership at FEI, and this is very hard for people that when you initially hire them, is that the only way to own any shares in Flinchbaugh Engineering is to work there. And it becomes a real powerful way to fund their retirement account. In fact, we created a pretty unique strategy where we contribute 3 to 15% of W-2 wages every year to an individual's retirement account held by the ESOP. And our plan is for that ESOP to create a value that's greater than what Social Security would be to a participant. So it becomes a meaningful part of your retirement planning. In 2013 to 2017, we had what we called 5 tough years. It really emphasized the need to continue to further diversify and decouple from Caterpillar and their volatility. And we put a lot of more energy and focus in that effort. In 2015, we had the opportunity to make our first component for Seakeeper. And if you don't have a boat, you probably don't know what Seakeeper does, but they make a gyroscopic stabilizing device that takes the roll out of a boat. So if you've been on a boat, you understand boats go like this, right? The stabilizer device is essentially a flywheel spinning around 8,000 RPMs that counteracts that momentum and creates a stable position for the boat. So it's sort of like standing on a dock. It's really eye-opening. In fact, I'm going to tell you just a little bit of an off-color story because it's really important to Seakeeper, the power of Seakeeper. I met Shep McKinney, who's one of the founders and inventors of the Seakeeper gyroscopic stabilizing device. And I said, how did you know, or when did you know it was going to be a great idea? They're the industry leaders now in the boating segment. And Shep said, well, we had initially built a prototype in the mid 2000s, and we wanted to see how customers would react to it. So we called a captain, crusty old captain, and said, hey, would you come out on our boat with us? We want to demonstrate this new product. And the crusty captain said, sure, but can I bring my wife and my son? And they said, sure, bring them along. So they were out on the boat, and Johnny, called the son Johnny, Johnny's shy and kind of off by himself on the boat. And they thought, well, let's get Johnny engaged in the fun here. So they're out in the boat and they're rocking back and forth. And they said, okay, we're going to count down, Johnny, and then I want you to hit the button. And so, the boat's swaying back and forth, and they count down 3, 2, 1, and Johnny hits the button and the boat stops. It just sits there like a dock. Johnny goes, holy shit. And that's when Shep McKinney said, I knew we had something. If we could get a young man, a 10-year-old, to say that in front of his parents, it's like, wow, And I just love that story because it has so much power in it, and it's really the reaction when you're on a boat and the Seakeeper is in operation. So in 2017, again, we had this unique opportunity to partner with a local customer, Seakeeper. They're based in just outside of Reading on a technically challenging long-term project. They needed space to grow. They were growing like crazy, and we presented them with what we called was the big idea. Which is strategic cell migration on steroids. Let's move your equipment into our factory and let's dedicate a whole building to making your components. And that's what we did. We moved 18 machines, dedicated an entire building, and we're up and running within 2 months. And that really turbocharged our growth, not only with Seakeeper, but in terms of our diversification strategy as well. In 2022, we paid off the second phase of our ESOP loans. So in 2012, if you remember, we became fully 100% ESOP. We had to pay that loan off, and we did that over 10 years. And in 2022, we were ESOP debt-free, which was a milestone for us. And if you know anything about ESOPs, you also know that we're tax advantaged. We don't pay state or federal income tax. And so that gives us a competitive advantage and helps us continue to fuel our growth. This was also a great opportunity to update our values, vision, and purpose statement. And I'm not going to read it to you, but the one primary thing I will highlight is that our purpose at the end of the day is to create a brighter future for our employee owners through our ESOP model. So in 2023, you can see our campus, again, built on that old crumbling airfield, now called Runway. Building 1 is where we started in 1978. We added Building 2 built over 3 periods between 1984 and 93. In 2003, we added building number 3. 2014, we added building number 4, which is dedicated completely to Seakeeper product. And in building number 5, we added in 2018. In January 1st of 2024, we announced the acquisition of Billet Industries. So this is our first acquisition over the history of our business. Is only 1.3 miles away from our main campus. Second generation owner, Troy Billet, sold the business to us. They're very similar to us in terms of what they do and how they do it. But the thing that's great for us is they participate in different markets. They have different certifications to participate in those markets. And they have 20 different customers, and we have no shared customers. So it really has turbocharged our diversification strategy. They are a wholly owned subsidiary of Flinchbaugh Engineering, so that we kept the Billet name and the Billet brand. And all their employees will eventually become, if they meet the eligibility requirements, employee owners. So in this way, Troy has essentially sold his business to his employees. A really great model to follow. And we really do think we're stronger together. Billet participates in, like I said, a lot of their businesses in defense. There are billions being spent just in the U.S. Navy alone in this area. And we really think there's an opportunity to grow both our businesses together in support of these types of markets. So in 46 years, taking us from 1978 to 2024, we started with one customer, with a couple entrepreneurs willing to take a big risk, and we've grown it and added our first acquisition. And this is what our markets look like in terms of our diversification currently. Caterpillar was 100% through until 1994, and now they're down to 33% of our total sales volume. A remarkable achievement, I think, by all the folks that made it happen. So in 2024, we have 7 buildings, 5 on our main campus, 1, and we have a 25,000 square foot warehouse about a mile down the road. And now we've added Billet Industries to our portfolio. We have over 200,000 square feet under roof, 150 machine tools, 250 employees and growing, and I've reached 70 million in annual sales. And most importantly, we're 100% employee owned, and together we've distributed over $8 million in ESOP benefits since our inception in 2001. What's next? We're going to continue to stay focused on our purpose, which is to create a brighter future for our employee owners. We're going to do that through continued growth and diversification. We're going to continue to invest in our people and technology, and we're going to look for other companies like Billet that might be a good fit for us as we continue to build a brighter future for our employee owners. So now you know why we're called Flinchbaugh Engineering. Any questions? Is that appropriate to ask questions?
Yeah. Brad got the mic. Who's first? First of all, presentation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's better than the shrimp.
Great presentation.
What is I know that in the manufacturing area around here, I'm at Fox 43. We get a lot of people asking for recruiting questions. What's the job market like in your sector right now? And what's it like trying to bring people in?
It's challenging. I talked about the billions being spent by the U.S. Navy. BAE is another one that comes into the defense markets. And those large chunks of spend are driving up demand for people. And so we're still seeing wage pressure at the hourly operator level. So it's been challenging. We talked about the machinist apprenticeship program. We've also been very focused on working with the local tech schools to try to use that as a recruiting opportunity. We've also have a very strong in-house training program, so we can take someone essentially off the street and teach them what we do. So we've created some enablers in-house, but the market is still very tight on the labor side. Steve, did you have a question? Oh. Where are they based?
Yeah.
Go back to did you turn off my
So for those who didn't hear, I asked where is Billet Industries based?
So it's about 1.3 miles away on Camel Road, right off of 462, kind of tucked beside American Hydro. Any other questions for me? All right. Oh.
Up here.
You laid out your strategy for selective acquisition. Is there any fear of being acquired?
No fear. Certainly a possibility. I would say that our goal was to be a perpetual ESOP, and there are some mechanisms that you can put in place within the ESOP structure that does make it challenging to be acquired. We would like to think that we're going to be an ESOP forever. That's the goal.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
My background. Well, I started out as a farm kid in Lancaster, so I grew up essentially working on a farm, and I quickly realized that farm work is hard, and that college looked to be like a better path for me. And so I went to University of Delaware. I was a wrestler, so I paid my way through college, and I wrestled and had a great experience doing that. And when I got out, I was recruited by First National Bank of Maryland, which I guess is M&T at this point. And I realized I didn't like banking either. So here I didn't like farming. I didn't like banking. I liked wrestling, but it's not really a career path. And so as a farm kid, I came back to this area. My wife and I were going to get married and build a family in this area. And I knocked on the door at ITT, and Rich Randall's, one of his peers at the time, Chuck Graves, took pity on me and hired me as a customer service rep, and gave me a price sheet, engineering catalog, and a list of phone numbers. And that was my first job at age, I think I was 23 at the time. And then I spent almost 15 years of my career. I had the privilege of working with Rich and a number of other really strong, successful people that helped me grow and mentored me and helped me get to where I was in my career when I joined Flinchbaugh Engineering.
So I do have a question.
Okay.
So manufacturing has taken a beating in our lifetimes, and the rap that Americans can't compete in manufacturing is being shown not to be true. But as you look around the region here, your own company and your peers, what do you consider to be the key elements of success for manufacturers in the U.S. in this era?
That's a really good question. What we see is most of the large global customers creating a regional sourcing model now. So they don't want to get trapped where they have all their supply coming in from one area of the world, call it China or Asia, or even Europe. So they've created supply bases that can support geographic regions. And so I think there is a bright future for manufacturing in the U.S. I also think that it's going to take continued investment in training and people to make that successful, to support that opportunity for us as a country. I also think that technology is going to come into play. I think AI is going to really revolutionize the way we train people, the way that the productivity that can be gained from people as well. So figuring out how to harness that technology and still inject fresh new talent into manufacturing, I think, is two of the critical things in my mind. You're welcome. Anything else for me? I know we're on a tight timeline. All right. Thank you.
So here's an interesting factoid. Both my brother-in-law and my father-in-law worked at Flinchbaugh Engineering. In fact, my father-in-law retired there after a few years ago after working there over 20 years. And I would say both of them took a lot of pride in the job and the work that they did there. And now it starts to make sense. Because what really stands out to me about this program was pride. There's clearly a lot of pride in your history. Thank you, Brian. Your team, your company, your products, and even your customers. And I think we could all learn a lot from talking about pride in our own work and how over time it builds something bigger in the future. So again, thank you for a wonderful presentation. In honor of today's program, he has signed the book, I Am Martin Luther King Jr. by Brad Meltzer, and it will be donated along with a bookmark made from the students at Creative York to the York City School District. And if you think this program was great, what do you hear we have coming up next week? Next week, we will hear from Vinay Singh, the CFO and Chief AI Officer for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. He will discuss his journey from India to now living in York and beyond. He will share his insights gained from his experience across government and industry, domestically and internationally. We'll hear about his role at HUD and how it aligns to his passions for economic and community development. Having said that, have an amazing Rotarian week. This meeting is adjourned.